What is it like to be a bat? Thomas Nagel's argument on consciousness and subjectivity. Thomas Nagel's 1974 article challenges the prevailing scientific view of the mind. He asks whether we can truly understand what it's like to be another conscious being. He argues that subjective experience, what it feels like, is fundamentally inaccessible from an objective scientific viewpoint. This is due to the inability to separate from subjective conscious experiences. The core argument. Nagel argues that each organism has its own unique conscious experience. For example, what it's like to be a bat involves echolocation and flight, which is a phenomena far removed from human experience. These experiences are subjective and cannot be fully captured by physical descriptions alone, and these differences have to do with the mind body problem. Thomas Nagel. He was an American philosopher born in 1937. He was an important figure in the philosophy of the mind, ethics, and epistemology. He challenged a leading philosophy at the time, physicalism. He questioned the belief that everything can be explained in physical terms. He countered that there is something fundamentally subjective about conscious experience that physical science just leaves out. He also emphasized the limits of reductionism, which is the idea that complex phenomena, such as consciousness itself, can be fully explained by simpler components like brain chemistry and mental states. He introduced the famous concept known as the view from nowhere. This concept argues that objectivity aims to remove personal perspective, but cannot capture all truths, especially about conscious experience. The bat thought experiment. Nagel posted the question, what is it like to be a bat? He uses the example of a bat to emphasize the alienness of another creature's experience. Though we can understand their physiology, we cannot access the bat's viewpoint and what it's like to perceive the world through echolocation. Nagel argued that because they use separate biological factors and traits, such as the aforementioned echolocation, in their consciousness, that us humans could never understand their perspective based on our own experience because we lack necessary components of their conscience. This is due to the fact that that anyone's conscience, is made up from their own experience with their own traits that form who they are and how they see the world. And our own bodies don't allow us to understand the traits that we do not have, which is why echolocation is very difficult for us to understand in a first person setting because we don't have it. So it's impossible for us to know exactly how it is to live with it or how it feels like. Nagel and the mind body problem. The mind body problem is the problem of understanding the relation of the mind to the body. The bat thought experiment shows that knowing all physical facts doesn't reveal what it's like to be a bat. Nagel's study suggests a full understanding of the mind requires more than just knowledge of the brain. This is because the understanding of the mind does not warrant understanding how the mind works with a different body and different experiences. As I said before, just because we understand the brain of the bat doesn't mean that we understand how their brain works with echolocation in accordance with their body and how we can understand how it feels to be a bat or what it's like and what their perceptions could be. Subjective versus objective perspectives. Nagel highlights a key divide between objective facts, which are measurable and observable, such as physical brain states, and subjective experience, which are qualitative, and first person experiences like pain, taste, and emotion. Science focuses on objectivity but cannot penetrate the realm of experience. This is because whether they are subjective or objective, they do not translate to the other. For example, a subjective fact, such as how something feels, cannot be explained through quantitative facts and vice versa. This is because those facts are separately in predetermined categories, because quantitative facts are things that can be measured and like weighed, but qualitative are qualities of something and their traits, which makes it even more difficult to understand them in the view of another, because you can't put a feeling into numbers, or you can't put numbers into feelings. The implications for science and reductionism. Nagel's challenge is to reductionism, the idea that all mental states can be reduced to physical brain states. He argues that subjective experience is irreducible, and any complete theory of the mind must account for it. Nagel argues that consciousness is what makes the mind body problem truly intractable. He contends that the most important and characteristic feature of conscious mental phenomena is poorly understood and largely ignored or wrongly addressed by reductionist theories. He also states that no currently available concept of reduction can be applied to consciousness. The subjective character of experience, the what is it like aspect, is not captured by reductive analysis of the mental functional states or intentional states, as these can be described to even to beings without experience, such as robots. This is true in the fact that we can explain to anyone what it is to be like a bat, but not exactly how it would be to live through their eyes or their perspectives. We can simply say how what the actions they could take, or possibly what they can think about, but not their true experiences and perspectives, because we can list these to anyone as robots, because they are it's so bland what we know that it doesn't take much understanding and perspective to be able to comprehend that type of information. Nagel's work also clarifies that the problem of consciousness is fundamentally about understanding and accounting for the subjective, qualitative nature of experience, qualia, and its inherent connection to a specific point of view, which undermines traditional reductionist and purely objective approaches. This is true because reductionists want to see the information and the mind of a being as something that can be put into numbers and data and that can be understood by anyone, but that's false, because it's pure, because some anyone's own experience is subjective to them, and what makes it subjective to them is the traits, qualities, and things of that nature. So this just proves that it's not possible for you to understand a subjective trait or quality or experience even without having their point of view, and you can't have someone's point of view if you don't have their similar traits, which is why we don't have the understanding of what it is to be a bat. So his critics' responses, one of them was Daniel Dennett, and Dennett argued that subjective experience can eventually be explained through models and computation. He coined the multiple drafts model of consciousness, suggesting that there is no central place where conscious experience occurs. He instead believes that there are various events of content fixation occurring in various places at various times in the brain. He believes Nagel underestimates the power of science to decode the mind and see what is like as potential explicable. In the eyes of in the eyes of our the previous data, this doesn't make any sense, because as Nagel already explained, the mind the mind doesn't work the mind doesn't work with the body. It's completely separate. So that's why our experiences are, or the mind works with the body, but our experiences are based off of things that we have. Like your body works in tune with the brain, which is why the brain the brain is thinking for the body, and the experiences the body is giving or taking in. And that's why this doesn't make any sense. Another critic was Paul Churchland. Churchland supports eliminative materialism, in which outdated concepts like qualia, the subjective and qualitative nature of experience, may be eliminated as neuroscience advances and neuroscience is used to explain subjective experiences. So, in this context, neuroscience is being used to explain the mind, and pretty much that the mind is experiencing a bunch of chemical reactions and things of that nature, where the mind is simply in a state, in a mental state, which is what they believe all these experiences to be being held on into the brain as. He does not believe the mind exists either, and that can be reduced to physical brain states, like I said before. They argue that the mind is simply just a brain state. He believes consciousness can be fully explained in terms of neurobiology, rejecting Nagel's dualist implications that mental properties can differ from physical ones.